So Michelangelo reflected the Roman Forum. He reflected it in a formal sense by making its shape correspond to the shape of the Roman Forum on the other side of the Palazzo Senatorio. But he also recalled it in a mnemonic way, in a memorable way. This section of the course is about the city in memory, the ways in which the city enshrines and concretizes, recalls its past, its memories, and tells them again and again into the future. Michelangelo is interested in that for what it tells us about the continuity of Rome between ancient and modern. But he's also interested in reinventing that ancient tradition. He gives it a new form, and he orients it in a new way to the modern city of Rome, the Renaissance city that opens out here to the northwest and on the way to St. Peter's. That sense in which he's not only recalling the past, but reinventing it, has to do with his very idea of architecture that was very much a part of his own time. The sense that it was not a going back to the past, not a retreat, not a nostalgia, but the use of the past as kind of raw material, if you like, sometimes in a physical sense with spoliae, fragments that are used in a raw material way, but in many ways with ideas that can come as much from books like Vitruvius as from actual remaining ancient buildings. And that reconstituting of the past in new form invigorates it, gives it new life, tells new stories, allows these buildings to be rhetorical. When I say architecture is rhetorical, I mean the language with which it is made is able to be articulate. It's able to tell us something, not about itself just as architecture, but about other things that matter to the human condition, to our political life, our spiritual life, our relationship with each other, our relationship with nature. Architecture is articulate of ideas. That architecture is rhetorical is essential to understanding Renaissance architecture and urban space. Because when the buildings are rhetorical, so too are the spaces that they shape. And that idea that architecture is rhetorical, that it shapes meaningful space, is what this course is actually all about. So from here, we look out to the city of Rome. We see this distant prospect, we see a skyline, we see domes on the skyline, and we're going to now move from here to another hill, the Hill of Janus, and talk about the Tempietto, a small domed building by one of Michelangelo's predecessors, Bramante. And there we're going to talk about the way a different kind of meaning is concretized. Here we're talking about the political life of the city, the life of how citizens interact with their government and how that government interacts with them and shapes their lives. Up on the Janiculum Hill, we'll talk about the way a sacred site gets enshrined and concretized and made even more meaningful by the architecture that defines it. From here, though, we're getting a window into Michelangelo's mind, into a way in which the Renaissance thought about architecture and urban space, the dialogue between buildings and space, that in this particular space, they're both important. The buildings are essential to defining the space, but the space is really the raison d'etre of the buildings. The space is why these buildings are here. And that dialogue between buildings and space is so essential to the Italian way of thinking about the urban realm. The idea that outdoor spaces are like rooms, that we feel contained in them. But in this particular case, if you like, the fourth wall of the room is missing. Or what it really is a kind of plateau that provides us a balustrade, a parapet from which we can look out to the city of Rome, framed by heroic classical sculptures that suggest we are also, in our own way, heroic citizens of this great city that Michelangelo became a citizen of in 1537. We're all citizens of Rome. Rome's an international city, a world city. And here on the Campidoglio, the Romans believed in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance that umbilicus that had been down in the Roman Forum had been moved up here. And we're really, therefore, at the center of the world. All roads lead to Rome, but also so many roads lead away from Rome. Rome is such a model for so many other urban places that here we get the sense of why that's true, because of the deep, creative thinking of artists like Michelangelo. So from here we'll move into the center of the city of Rome, we'll look around it eventually over the course of this course, and then we're going to return here at the very end on the Pozzesso route, the papal processional route that took the Pope from St. Peter's to the Lateran, his cathedral. This would have been the midpoint of that Pozzesso route, and as such it's also a threshold. The Pope and his procession would have left the Renaissance city of Rome and passed back into antiquity in the Forum, under triumphal arches, around the Colosseum, and onto the Lateran. And that's how we'll end the course, up here, thinking about where this all leads.